Rusame reader, Song. And today I will be reading to you from Sticky Notes and Trinkets by RainbowStar_772. That's me! Now, on to Chapter 22, Overdramatics and High Honors. America stretched, getting out of the chair he'd been sitting in since about 11 last night. He looked at the 3 finished pins. Honestly, quite content with them. They were drawings he had done on treated paper that he'd gone over with a careful coat of UV resin. One pin was an orchard oriole, a female one. It felt a little silly to give Russia something that blatantly represented himself, but he figured that it fit since the other pin was a mountain lion, something that reminded him of Russia. The last pin was the same oriole and mountain lion, the oriole flying around the mountain lion. He carefully picked them up and put them into a small package so that he could ensure Russia received the pins undamaged. He put it into his pocket and grabbed the other gift, a yellow frog plush. He made his way to the kitchen, taking some bread and putting it in the toaster. While he waited, he grabbed a pen and started to write a note, so that his dad wouldn't tear up the town looking for him when he was just going to school early. "I thought you were right-handed," America heard the tired-sounding voice of his brother say. "Canada, I speak for both Dad and myself when I say this. Shut up. Hand is hand." Canada, being the dramatic hellion he is, held the back of his hand to his forehead while saying, "Betrayed by my own brother. 'Tis a sad day. For Alexa, play allies or enemies." "You've been spending too much time with Kiwi. Alexa, stop." Canada walked away, still pretending like he had been betrayed, acting as though he'd been stabbed. America shook his head, grabbing the toast and buttering it before leaving the note and walking out of the house to go to school. He needed to get out there early if he didn't want to get caught, as he noticed sometimes Russia rode the bus, and sometimes he was there earlier, and he personally wasn't interested in getting caught. The walk was a fairly short one, only about 20 minutes. He looked back at his phone, considering what Gliss had suggested, talking to Russia. He wasn't sure it'd go well, and he couldn't find any signs that Russia would not be hostile towards him. But Russia also hadn't really shown any real signs of dislike towards him since after their first really bad interaction. He didn't feel safe reaching out without proof that Russia was at least okay with his existence. Proof he didn't have yet. Proof he might never have. That thought bothered him. This sort of limbo he was in had never ended well. Not for him, at least. Usually, whoever seemed indifferent to him ended up hating him for one reason or another. He wasn't sure how long this state of limbo would go on for before he reached the likely ending of Russia disliking him. It wasn't unusual for him. Even if someone was close to him, they sometimes would end up hating him. He remembered being friends with Dubai. They had been close, almost best friends. Dubai hadn't minded that his hobbies seemed feminine, though he did tease him about it. Good things didn't last, something America now knew well. At some point, he'd started to have what he thought was a crush at the time. He thought even if it'd make things awkward, he would be safe to tell him about it. He had been dead wrong. He'd started to tell Dubai that he was gay, and before he knew it, his once friend had left him and called him a slur on the way out. He shook his head to clear his thoughts as he entered the school. He knew now that what he'd been feeling wasn't a crush. It was just a craving for a closer queer platonic bond with someone he'd perceived as safe. It turned out that the person wasn't safe. And now that he thought back to it, he was glad to not be close to that person. Though sometimes he couldn't help but miss the friend he'd once had. He couldn't help but find a connection between his situation and the song How to Rest by the Crane Wives. He'd found it a little funny, since he quite literally couldn't rest. He shook his head in an attempt to clear the memories and the dramatic irony of the connection between the song and his life. Looking up to find that he was in front of the school already. He headed in and made his way over to Rush's locker, doing a quick check to make sure no one was nearby before carefully putting the wrapped pins in. He closed the locker and quickly made his way to the library, planning to pick back up where he'd left off in the book that he'd been recommended. But he paused for a second, considering that it may be a good idea to stay to see Russia's reaction, especially since he wanted to know if Russia enjoyed the gift. He sighed and looked through his phone, deciding to read a book on his phone while he waited. After a while, he could hear someone's footsteps, so he looked up to see who was coming. Seeing that it wasn't Russia, it was his once friend, Dubai. He hid himself away fairly quickly, not wanting to be spotted. Soon enough, he heard Dubai walking off. He let out a relieved sigh and mentally thanked the luck granted to him by the stars. Or, well, that's how he liked to think about it. He didn't take himself out of his little hiding spot, not seeing a reason to, as it had a fairly good view of Russia's locker. Plus, it wasn't exactly uncomfortable either. Ultimately, it had more benefits than detriments. It wasn't much longer after Dubai was gone that he saw Russia. He smiled a little as he saw Russia open his locker and retrieve the pins, admittedly getting a little excited as he saw Russia taking them out of the casing. Then Russia did something he wasn't at all expecting. Taking off his hat, that America distantly recognized as an Ushanka, and affixing the pins to it before putting it back on. He flushed a little at that. Russia almost certainly didn't know how high of an honor that kind of thing felt like, especially seeing as this was the third time he'd done it. The 2 bracelets he had made seemed to have become a permanent fixture in Russia's outfit, and he'd yet to see the scarf outside of the day he'd given it to Russia, which was something he had expected, since they were still in a fairly warm fall at the moment. And that is the end of this chapter. I hope you enjoyed. Anyway, I'd like to invite you to join the Discord, which is linked down in the description below. That being said, I hope you have a nice rest of your day, night, or whatever it is for you. Just enjoy your time, and I will see you tomorrow.